Alrighty, happy Thursday, my friends. Welcome back to our NoCodeOps live community show. I hope you're doing well wherever in the world you're joining us from. I can see some people in the chat already. We have Harrison, Stephen from Toronto, Canada. Also, Harrison from Toronto. All our Canadian friends are here. That's amazing. And if this is your first time joining our live stream, we are NoCodeOps, an international community for operations professionals that leverage the power of no-code tools at work. And so we get here every Thursday. We try to have these live streams every Thursday so that people like you, operators, can really get the skills that they need to become the best version of themselves with the power of no code. And in order for you to do that, we invite the best speakers from the no-code space. And so today, it's my pleasure and honor to have Alex joining us from the team at 9x, one of the most amazing automation agencies that you can find out there. So Alex, founder at 9x, great to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Claudia. I'm also honored and pleased to be here. I hope I live up to the introduction.
Absolutely. And, people know us in the space, right? In the no-code space. And whenever somebody comes to me or joins the community, your name is always one of the first that pops up. Like everyone comes to me telling me how amazing the no-code operator crash course is, or how amazing it was to learn about APIs with you. And so you're definitely one of the people that I really admire in the space and that I've been learning the most from. So even my own personal learning and growth was thanks to you and the team at 9x. So again, super great to have you here.
Super cool.
And I can see like we have more people joining from Denver, from Colombia, Oklahoma. Fantastic. And people from the NoCodeOps community, is so great to have you here supporting our events. It means the world to me. I was reading a comment a while back from one of you, and that's the hint. I do read the comments, and so like and subscribe. Some of you were saying that these series of events that we've been having in 2024 has been the best so far, and I couldn't agree anymore because we've been having fantastic speakers. And so, Alex, before we dive into the topic of today, which is data mastery for ops, so designing a great database, I would like to learn a little bit more about your background and how you got into no code in the first place.
Yes, so very briefly about myself. I come from the startup world. Basically, I worked in VC-backed startups for about 7 to 8 years, 3 different ones. And there I had mostly operational business development roles. So I'm a non-technical operator that gradually discovered no code and started using it to automate my own processes, the processes of my teams. So it really came from a personal need. And also I really tried to solve a problem that I had encountered in the first 2 startups where I worked, where basically if you needed anything implemented, you needed to ask tech. So the main skill before getting into no code was how can you ask tech in the smartest way, the nicest way, so that they might build something for you. Which is, it's good if you're good at talking people into doing things for you. That might work for a while. However, if you have a lot of things that you need to build for your team, it's a bit limited. Or let's say if your relationship with the CTO or head of engineering gets tensed, then you can't build anything. And then you have now this opportunity to use no-code platforms to so not really build things from scratch. Although today we're going to build things from scratch in this workshop just to illustrate things, but really to build things on top of the existing SaaS solutions you're already using. So that's how I got into it. And then that's how eventually I decided that the skills I acquired and the different use cases I could implement in the last startup I worked with before founding 9x, a lot of other companies could benefit from that. We came to the same conclusion with my co-founder, Pierre, at the time, and didn't hesitate to get started. In a nutshell.
Amazing. And today, you can brag about your company in IMAX because you're empowering so many teams out there. I know that you guys have been putting together trainings for companies,
Yep.
and it's just really inspiring to see you work. And I'm super happy that we get to work with you within our community as well. That's really, really an honor again. We do have one question, before we even get started about you, Alex. Where are you
Please.
joining us from?
Sorry.
Where are you joining us from?
So I'm based in Berlin, just like the rest of my team. But I do speak English with a French accent. Some of you have noticed. So I'm originally from France. Yeah. So English, German, French. Yeah. If we want to
Yeah.
chat later, feel free.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much. And speaking about the topic today, why is it important to design a good database? Because here at NoCodeOps, you've also been following our events. We've been talking about all sorts of different aspects of no code, process mapping, custom Zapier apps, you name it. But why is database an important skill for an operator to master?
So database. So when we're referring to, by the way, the workshop is going to be about database and data in general. I think data mastery is a bit. It's a bit. I hope I live up to the expectation. But in general, our observation at 9x is that when you take an operator that is basically doesn't have any technical skills, doesn't know how to code, doesn't know how to program, and that's normal. And when they start using no-code platforms, you're basically borrowing engineer superpowers, which
Mm,
means that it is no-code, but you are behind the scenes. You're using code. It's no miracle. It's the same technology. And what is true is that even if developers have abstracted a lot of things for us, have made things simpler, you just need to point and click, create a few logic inside your zaps or your make scenarios, and then you have an integration. Behind the scenes, you're still using technology. And there are things that you need to understand from a technical standpoint that will make you a better no-coder, independently of the platform that you're using. For Zapier and Make, that's more in the area of APIs and webhooks. So we released a course on this. It helps you take your current usage of these platforms to the next level and build more advanced workflows, or also understand more what's happening behind the scenes. When you are using no-code databases like Airtable, Notion, SmartSuite, Coda, and the next one, you are using a relational database, or actually an abstraction of what is one. And we see so many end users of those platforms who are looking at the next feature. Oh, Airtable AI field. It's very interesting. But what will make you a very sound and proficient user of Airtable, first and foremost, is understanding what we're going to cover in this workshop, is understanding data, understanding databases, how to structure them. And that's why we think this, like, we insist on the training side, more on the technical aspects, and that's why also we chose this topic for today, because I think it's independently of the platform that you're using, what you will take away from this workshop will be applicable to any no-code database that you work with.
amazing. And with that, I feel like the people are hyped, people are hooked.
Are we warmed
So
up?
should we
Let's
get
go.
started? Are we
Yeah, I can't
ready?
wait. Like I've been, it's the first time I'm doing this new format of workshop, where basically I'm blending some of the course content, and I try to inject it at moments where we are going to have practical database design decisions.
Amazing.
Anyways, let's get started. So welcome to this workshop on data mastery for ops. We can call it Alex tries to explain database in simple terms, and is not a master, but lifelong learner. My name is Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of 9x. We are the automation partner of fast-growing tech companies. These include Make, nice logo, Circular, which is a B2B SaaS company in Germany, Pinata, Hair and Skin, and a bunch of others. We do advisory, we do implementation services, and we offer trainings. Today, we're going to dive in this topic, important topic that we just discussed with Claudia, which is data and databases. So I'll see how I can switch to the next slide. Okay, just a quick mention, all the tips I will share with you are taken from the course Data and Databases for Operators. In this course, you learned how to leverage databases at work, how to work with and transform data. We're not going to see that so much today. It's really one area that's important but that we don't cover. And eventually how you can build better database-powered workflows. And whenever I'm going to refer to a tip from the course, so it's a slide from the course that I'm just taking there for the sake of illustration, this will be yellow slides. And this will be always highlighted concept. And you will see anyways, we'll switch from building to slides. So brief introduction before we head to the workshop part. I'm going to repeat a little bit what we just discussed with Claudia. This is also the introduction of the course. So every job today revolves around data. And if we take a couple of examples, if you work in marketing, if you're a marketing manager, you might be dealing on a daily or weekly basis with campaigns, you might be dealing with channels or content that you need to create. And so for each of these, there's a subset of data points that are very relevant for you to do your job the best you can. If you work in sales, your sales manager, account executive, or SDRs, we might swap this for leads, companies, or deals. And each of these also has important data points, or you are storing these in specific databases, in this case, the CRM. If you're a project manager, I'm going to skip this, projects, stakeholders, meetings, different data, same. If you work in finance, it's going to be invoices, accounts, contracts, and different data points. So every job nowadays more or less revolves around data, yet most operators struggle with data. If we look at where they struggle, usually the common data mistakes they tend to make is A, they tend to poorly structure the databases they work with. And when I mean database, I don't mean just Airtable or Notion. Every SaaS tool you are using today, to a certain extent, is a front end that allows you to write inside a specific database. Your HR software that you use for recruiting or managing employees, it's a database with information about your team. Your CRM is the database where you store information about your commercial efforts. All the tools you're working with on a daily basis are databases. And you're making choices when you configure these tools that eventually end up with poorly structuring these databases behind the scenes. Second mistake, you don't know how to transform data on their own. So some of you who spend time working with Zapier and Make start tinkering with that. You start seeing the potential of not doing things manually every day, 5 times a day, and instead building a Make scenario or a Zap that is going to perform that transformation for you. Most of you struggle with that, and there are good reasons for that. Like it's not necessarily that you don't know how to use Make or Zapier. It is more that data transformation. There are a number of things that you need to be aware of, and we're going to see some of them in the workshop. And finally, they don't take full advantage of database functionalities. Databases is not just a place where you store information and then you can retrieve it from time to time. There are some powerful properties that we can use. These are powerful systems. Operators usually don't know about these functionalities or are really just scratching the surface when it comes to using these functionalities. So 3 takeaways about data I want you to take from this workshop, and I want you to live with you. First, data takes multiple forms. You can also see we can do nice animations on pitch. Awesome. Second, data is not static. We can transform it. And three, databases are powerful tools we can leverage. This is basically these are the main takeaways from the course, data and databases for operators. All right, that was for the small talk. Now let's get to the
Let's
workshop.
get to business.
Exactly. Stop talking. Let's. Can you show us some skills, please? So in this workshop, I'm going to build a database. So far, so good. From scratch that fits specific requirements. We want to build productized. Productized is a fictional marketplace where businesses can find and compare productized services and book them. Before we start with a very high level list of requirements, let's have a look at, and this is a workshop on databases. So my front end is obviously the bare bone that you can imagine. That's, by the way, one thing. If you are the fastest way if you want to test building an MVP or test the logic of an app, you can today build in Coda or Airtable in less than an hour. You can build something that looks like this. The front end is ugly, but you can already test the flow and how things work. And today we're not doing front end, so that's how far we will go. So I have productized, and we have the buyer side and the seller side. On the buyer side, this is NoCodeOps. They've decided to outsource a couple of services to agencies, and they can browse. They have design services from Design Joy. There's automation services from 9x, and there's also this new agency that's also based in Berlin that we met today called Humble and Brag, that helps you build and grow your YouTube channel. Yeah, so we can browse the services here. We can select
I like
one.
the oxymoron there, humble and brag.
Sorry?
I like the oxymoron there of humble and brag at the same time. That's quite cool.
Exactly. Yeah, you need to have a abundance mindset. Maybe they get a customer from the webinar, and so Claudia is very interested in automation as a service, because I still decide what you're interested in for this one, and can request the service. And so from the buyer side, then if she goes to my request, she can see, okay, I requested this from 9x automation as a service. Let's just see what they have to say. And then on the other side, on the seller side, this is more the 9x dashboard. And then we can see, oh, finally, NoCodeOps wants to get our productized service. And we can say accept or decline. Very basic functionality. The question is, what is the database that powers this, and how do we get to build that in the first place? So we'll start with an empty database. And we will start with the requirements. So to wrap up what I just showed you, which are the requirements for our app, we want to build a B2B marketplace for productized services where I can browse available services, where buyers can request the service, and where sellers can accept or decline request. 40 minutes, we can do it. In terms of stack, I'm going to repeat myself again. We are using Airtable today, but everything I show you, you can also build in Notion, in Coda, in Smart Suite, and everything you're going to see in this workshop. In my opinion, this is the core that makes you a better user for these platforms. Of course, then on the edge, platforms like Coda, for instance, have also a lot of additional functionalities that are very powerful. But at the very, very core, those data skills that we're going to cover, they will make you a better Coda user.
That's fantastic. And again, I feel like it's so important to build these foundations. And like, given that you guys also have a full-on course about it, is great. And that you're here to teach us the core of what we need to get to become a better no-code operator is really, really great. Because right now, whoever is watching live gets the chance to almost be in a cohort for the next 40 minutes or so. So you guys, this is a great opportunity for anyone in our community and anyone watching right now. And thank you, Alex, again.
Yeah, and therefore it's forbidden to leave before the end.
Of
Claudia,
course.
yeah, I think obviously. So where do we start? Again, starting point, which is for most projects, starting point is this. This is where I get most excited. Maybe this is where most of you are not so excited because blank page syndrome, where do I start? How do I call my table? Do I need to ask for some help? This is where like I get super, super excited. So we start with the database schema. First question, what is the schema? Of course, a schema looks like this at a high level. So here we have a different schema, which could be for a food delivery app, where you have restaurants, dishes, orders, customers. These are the tables. So this is the schema, and it's going to specify what can be stored in the database. You have these three things at a high level. You can see that the tables and their name. Then we have the fields, and then we have those little relations there. Okay, so let's determine the database schema. If we go in Airtable, and if I prepare things properly, we have, I forgot to delete it. We have the requirements here again. Can you see enough, or should I zoom a little bit? It's good? You can see properly?
Oh, sorry. I've been hosting live streams for almost 3 years, but I still forget to unmute from time to time. I can see it, but if you can make it a little bit bigger, maybe it can help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super.
perfect.
So this is what we had on the slides. And I'm going to delete this extension. And in Airtable, there's this app called Schema, base schema. So maybe I go a bit fast. Add an extension. So first you go to extensions. This is more a part of Airtable that's I believe will be discontinued or is changing a little bit in the next years because a little bit less front and center. And you can select apps. One of them, base schema, and it will give you as we make changes to our Airtable base, it will give us the current schema. So right now we have one table with just a field name, which is very sad, but that we can change very soon. Okay, so that's the base schema. And then from there, basically, let's think about our requirement. So we have, for lack of a better starting point or knowing what to do, I will stick to our high-level requirements, and we can browse available services. So I might have a services table. I have the notion of buyers. I have sellers. So let's start maybe with our buyers and sellers. So I have a buyers table, and there buyers we're dealing with companies. So we could imagine having a company name. I'm going to close this. Company name. Makes sense. We can have companies have a website. These days, it's pretty common. And let's say they also have a number of employees and belong to a certain industry. This is not a contest to have the most comprehensive database. This is just illustrative. Okay, makes sense. We also said we have sellers, right? So we could do this and say, okay, I have sellers. Yeah, and this is what many people would do. And then we also would add services that sellers offer and requests so that both sides can transact. So this is what I see often many do, and this is where problems begin. This is where we need to talk about data normalization. Ooh, what is this? So what is data normalization? Data normalization is organizing data into related table so that we can reduce data redundancy. Awesome, Alex. You answer with another question. What is data redundancy? Data redundancy, it's the duplication of data in a database. In plain English, it's when the same data is stored in multiple places. It's going to create redundancy. It can happen at field level, we call that field redundancy. It can happen at record level, we call that record redundancy. It can happen at table level, table redundancy. Basically, we need to avoid that. So back to our schema. Here, with buyers and sellers, let's think a little bit of the implications of what we just did. We're storing kind of the same thing on both sides. We're storing companies who are buying and companies who are selling. Might not be a big deal right now. But the questions you should ask yourself now is, could a buyer become a seller? Do we have really a marketplace where there's strictly one side that has some particular characteristic and it will never be on the other side? Or could we have actually the same company on both sides? More concretely, if we go back to our amazing services here, could 9x hire Humble and Brag for growing their YouTube channel? We just did, so yes. Could Humble and Brag hire 9x to help them automate their agency? It looks like they did as well. And so now we have a problem that we have table redundancy. And one of the other consequences of that, so we have a company that might be on both sides. We might have 9x here as a buyer and 9x here as a seller. What happens if we update company information? Then we need to update both tables. You just created complexity by creating two tables. So unless you have a strong reason for doing that, we just call these companies, we ditch the sellers table, and then we'll see, and we might come a long way with this. Now the second
so you just deleted the sellers and you just left companies?
Exactly. I will have companies, and all the companies, whether they buy or sell, are in the same table.
Okay.
And that is not the straight answer to all. Like we're just talking about the implications here of and for that particular set of requirements, which are kept vague on purpose. I'm not saying this is the database design you should always adopt. What I'm saying is we have a clear, without knowing how things might evolve, we are already creating redundancy without a clear reason to do so.
I see.
Keep one table as much as possible. The version of that in some Airtable bases I've seen where people do project management is having a table for open tasks and having another table for completed tasks, and then building automations to, when a task is completed, delete in this table and paste in the other one, while you can just use a status field. It's open or it's completed. So table redundancy avoided here. Then what we see people doing as well, when people are going to sign up to productized, they're going to leave their email. Maybe we want to learn also a bit more about them, who they are. So we might ask for a full name, and etc. We can also ask for the job title of the person, and that works wonderfully as long as we say that there's only one person managing the account. If we start having, for a company, having, for instance, for 9x, not just me, but also Piv and Jan need to have access to our accounts or need to be able to make requests on the behalf of 9x, then we're going to have email 1, full name 1, job title 1, email 2, full name 2, job title 2. We're starting to see, so it's not field redundancy, that's not technically that, but we're going to have an explosion of columns. And when you have that, this screams, let's have another table and just have users. And we're dealing with a different thing here. We are dealing with people, and people that work at a certain company. And once you do that, and we're going to see with record relation how you can scale that, you will see that you're keeping the number of fields that you need limited, and all you're going to have is 1, 2, 3 records if you have 3 contacts in the same company. Okay. We
And
can
are you then going to use a formula in a third table that you're going to create to associate the people with the companies?
so this I'm
Or
not
I'm
going.
jumping too far ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to. We're going to stay really on the design of the database itself, not really build automations. I can show maybe behind the scenes how we're structured at the end, like the end build. Here, I'm really focusing on things that might be anecdotal or not so important at the beginning. Like how do you select your fields? How do you name them? How many tables do you do? Which are very basic considerations, but which down the line can cost you a lot of time and effort because you create something too complex or more complex than it should be. So we have a
Appreciate
table with
that.
users, and here in theory you would have I would have the name, job title, email, phone, LinkedIn, company. We'll get to that. This is the table there. And then I have requests and services. Yeah, if you recall the requirements again, I'll show them right here. We have buyers can request a service. So I need each company to be able to provide services. And so we will store them in a separate table. It's the same point as with the users. If the company can offer one service, you might store it here. But if I have 2 offers, we're going to start scaling the number of columns. You need a different table for services. And finally, we'll get to that in a minute when I explain table relations. We are going to need a joint table for the request. So to reflect how companies transact with each other, how a buyer requests a service. So that's for the schema. I think I haven't missed anything. At a high level, we will. So I'm just going to create it. Yeah, no, I think it's fine. I'm going to show the second table. So companies, users, services, and requests, just to show you the schema right now where we stand. I added a couple of fields in the preparation, but basically I have just 4 tables. One note here, before we move to the next step. Making changes to your schema is 100 times easier than it used to be when you had to do it with code. You have making those changes, adding a field, renaming it, changing what type of data can be stored in it, adding a relation to the table. Oh no, I want to remove it and add it to another table. These kind of things, the point and click that you're able to do here were extremely painful to do back in the days.
Yeah,
Because
and this is like where I feel the real power of no codes is empowering operators nowadays, because what you're talking about is when back in the days your regular operator used to go to the IT team with this kind of request, and then the IT team will be like putting their hands in their hair and just like scream because it would take so long. And now we can just see how clear and easy it is to just like point and click and create something as streamlined and organized as this.
Yeah, it's very easy to do this, and to a certain extent, this makes mistakes at this level much more allowed. We can mess up. The advantage of a schema on Airtable or on Notion or Coda or SmartSuite, it's going to evolve over time, and you can mess things up. That is okay. It helps, however, and with practice, you can save time by making the right assumptions from the start, but it's bound to evolve. So we're there at step 1. We have sort of defined the high level schema. Step 2, we need to define table relations. So table relations here right now, it's not much of a relational database. We have 4 tables looking at each other, but not much interaction. For this, we are going to use in Airtable the linked record field, which is the first field right on top. Where do I close this? Nope. No. Interesting. So this field here, the first one linked to another record, is the one where you can link tables to each other. And I assume most of you know that already. If you're using Airtable or Notion or similar, you're aware of the existence of those fields and how to use them. Where we see mistakes and where it will make you a better user is understanding the different types of relations you can build between tables. Which brings us to, you've guessed it, back to the course. How do we define table relations? So let's have table A and table B. And basically the relation, we're going to say, well, let's take table A records. There's one field that is going to store for each record refer to some of table B records, and then on the other side is going to be the same. And to find out which type of association makes the most sense, you should ask yourself the following questions. Can a record from table A have one or many records from table B? Does a record from table B belong to many records from table A? Are you confused? Awesome. Let's look at examples. So first, one-to-one relation, also called monogamy for tables. One-to-one relations, for example, and I checked with ChatGPT earlier, has actually 3 exceptions: Bolivia, South Africa, and Netherlands. So it doesn't work. That's a bad example. I'm sorry for this. But usually, if you're a normal country, you have one capital city and one country. So a capital city has one country, and a country has one capital city, except for Netherlands, South Africa, and Bolivia. Then you have the 1 to n relation. This is where I stop the dating metaphors. I'll let you extrapolate. So here we take cities and people. Let's assume you're only at one place at a time, or you only have one residence area, like place where you live. So a person belongs to one city, but a city has hopefully many inhabitants. So it's one to many. A city record can be linked to multiple records on the people table, but on the people table you can only be referred to one city. 1 to n. N to n association. Companies and contacts in the CRM. Companies have many contacts, and contacts can belong to many companies. Your employee there, your investor there, founder out there. So basically, you're not tied to just one organization. And then finally, we have, for like the 4 most common patterns, many-to-many relation with joint table. So here, back to our food delivery app example, let's say you have restaurants and customers and they are going to transact with each other. If we had only many-to-many, basically you run into a problem that I can only transact once with a restaurant. Plus, we're not storing much information. We're just saying, Alex went to this restaurant once. You need an object, you need a table in the middle that is going to store the transactions between the restaurant's table and the customer's table. It's called a joint table. And there we have, there are different ways. You could say, okay, because now you have to define the relation here and the relation here with this table. So you could say maybe multiple customers order once at one restaurant, or one customer, an order is the encounter of one restaurant with one customer. There are different combinations possible. And then the thing we're not going to cover in this workshop this is just opening the gates of how complex a relational database can be, because you could have a joint table of a joint table, and things starts to get interesting.
Yeah, and as soon as you mentioned the restaurants, I started thinking about the waiter and APIs. And so I thought you were going to say the one thing we're not going to mention is APIs, and like that opens up a whole new metaphor. And so
Yeah,
we went from like dating to restaurant. And then if you've been in the no code space for a bit now, you would know that from a restaurant, you always have an API in the corner waiting.
yeah,
And so I'm glad we're not covering APIs. We've done that in the past, so we can continue with this.
exactly. And what I will not do is define the dating equivalent of end-to-end relation with a joint table. Okay, so now if we go back to our example, we need to define table relations in our talk. So the only difference between the first and the second table is I added some data. So we have companies, we have users, services. The services are already entered, and request is empty. Okay. So first, in the users table, users are linked to companies. This is what I wanted to do in the first place. I even have it here. The question is, how? So by default, when you create a link record field in Airtable, you are in the many-to-many relation, meaning one user can be linked to multiple records on the other side, to multiple companies, and companies can have multiple users. So if you want to do one-to-one, you untick those two on both sides. If you want to do one-sided one-to-many, you will untick on the right table. And here in this case, there's also one thing I advise you to do. I would name this field plural if I have a many relationship on this side, and I will keep the singular to explicitly inform here that a user can only be linked to one company. So that's the first one. Then on the services, so right now we have our services table. Companies deliver services, so we need to reflect that. And can a service be linked to multiple companies? Doesn't make much sense in my opinion. Every company has their own productized service that they offer on the marketplace. So we're going to untick that. We are going to call this company. And actually, I already had it here. So I'm just going to turn this. Okay. And on the other side, I'm going to check what happens. Can a company offer multiple services? Definitely. So we're good here. Yeah, they only need an access to. NoCodeOps has no productized service. They have an amazing SaaS instead. That's pretty much it for this side. And then finally, we have the request table. And here we're going to see an infamous joint
NoCodeOps has
table.
community as a service for free.
Community as a service for free.
Community
Yeah.
as a service to the people.
Exactly. So here, this is clearly the case of a joint table. Companies are going to transact with each other, and the object of the transaction is going to be a service. So first, I want a buyer, and it's going to be a company. And it makes sense that it's one company making the buying request. So I'm just going to rename this buyer. Next, I will have a seller. That's the link to companies. I just have one. And finally, I will have a service. And same in this case, I'm just only going to allow purchasing one service. So the thing you need to do whenever you create those things is go check what's happening on the other side. So can a buyer, this is the first one. So it's buying request. You were expecting lots of automations. We end up just writing stuff, but this is actually important. Can a company request multiple services? Definitely. It would be a poor business idea otherwise. What was the second one? The second one on the request side, can a company sell multiple services? Yes. But now if you think about it, right now, I might not need this bit here. Why? Because my service is already linked to the company. So here's really more a question, and with no-code databases, sometimes you need to establish this connection, sometimes you may not. But strictly speaking, unless I need to establish a relation, I will not use it. And so here instead, I can just delete. Wonderful. I will just have one service requested per request. Services can be requested multiple times, hopefully. And the buyer, or the seller, sorry, just going to be what we call a lookup field, which looks up in the service table the company. This is a form of automation because we're just saying, well, if your service here is the company is always provided at service level, then here we're just looking this information up. And if we can look at the schema, and I need to speed up a little bit, otherwise you won't have time for questions. That was a lot of work to get to this outcome. So now we have and by the way, there's different relationships that are expressed here. The only one we're interested in are the first one, so the linked record. And this is what we've built just now. We've built 4 tables linked to each other in different ways. So we have users belongs to companies. We have this join table right here in the middle between companies and each other. And we've created this different this business logic basically. I'm just wondering if I don't have one too many, or I forgot to delete one. Do we have twice requests? Exactly, request 2. We don't need that. Okay, so that's for this step. Define table relations. This is the thing that you need to be careful with and experiment with, so that you ideally you try to nail this from the start. You can always change it, super easy to change it. But this is the part where spend the next time you have a project of this kind and you need to kickstart, spend more time asking yourself those questions. Which tables do you need? How are they going to relate with each other? This compounds down the line. All right, next, we still have some work to do. Let's fill in those tables, and we need to define the field types. Some of you may have noticed Alex is just adding fields with a single line text. Is he a rookie, or isn't aware that we have different field types? You're right. We need to define the field types, and here I want to give you some background as to why this is important. And this is important because of data types. Back to the course. So what are data types? When we refer to data, we don't refer to something uniform. Data can take different forms. The 6 most common data types you will use and need in 95% of cases are the following: string, which is text; number, which is number; Boolean, which is true or false. Like the front-end equivalent of a Boolean is a checkbox; dates; arrays, which are a list of things; and objects, which I will not cover today, but which is a bit more advanced, but not that more advanced, but still a little bit more advanced. And one thing, when you do select the table fields in your database, you are determining the data types you can store in each field. So when we're going to select a field like a single select or a single line text or a rich text, we are storing strings. You are storing text. If you don't know what to store, you store string. You'll figure it out later. If you're having fields like created time, last modified, sign up date, you are storing dates. Make sure you are storing dates. It will help you down the line too when you are going to transform data. If you have currencies, percentages, numbers, it's all the same. What you see in Airtable is just a matter of formatting. Behind the scenes, it's a number, and with number, we can do calculations. With strings, we can't. So let's define the field types. It's actually a quick change. Here, so we have the real data types changes, and we have, let's say, the cosmetics that no-code platforms offer us. And for instance, a field like URL, the only additional feature we get is that we have a link we can click that opens the page. It's a string. With employees, right now, it's a string.
It's a number.
We need a number. Why would we need a number? What are the types of data transformation we could do there? We can segment our companies. We can say, okay, the small one in a particular bucket, and the big ones in priority. I cannot end talk and do this. Okay, perfect. So now it's a number. We can make calculations with it. Amazing. Industry. It's also a string, but it's a string where I'd like to control a bit more the inputs or the accepted values. And for this, you can just switch to single select, let Airtable do its magic. And now we have at the moment 4 options, and we're more able to control what's stored in there. If we go to the users table, we have not much very interesting. There's something I will mention that I forgot to do a slide for, which is the first field. We have email. So email, same. Email is a string. This is a string storing 04. There's not, unfortunately, it depends on the no-code platforms. With form builders, when you do an email field, when you implement an email field, there's actually some validation happening, preventing you from entering anything that doesn't look like an email. With Airtable, it's a field called email that looks, there's a little icon email, but functionally speaking, you can still do a lot of random stuff there. There's also a phone number, and here the same applies. I'm not sure what is the additional benefit for this one, because you can also put test.
So is that still a string instead of a number?
It is. It's a string. Absolutely. You can't calculate with a phone field. These ones are a bit mysterious for me. Like, what's the additional benefit there? And same. You can use URL as well. So the benefit of URL is it becomes clickable, and you can immediately you can then go to the web page. Nice on the edge. 2 more things. So here, quite interesting. I will need it for my filtering function. Here you can see in my build at the end. If I want all services that are strictly below 3,000, this data transformation or this filtering, it can only be done against numbers. Therefore, I need this field here not to be a string. I will need it to be a number, and Airtable comes with something a bit nicer than a number. Can come with a currency field. It's just a number. We can do math with it.
You were saying about dates, how important it is to add a date, which is something I never do. Why is it so important?
So I will get to that with the last part, which is on calculated fields. But basically, dates are also numbers with a different. It's a data type that you can go from a date to a number with some methods to go from one to another. You can calculate durations. You can calculate conditions, like if after 5 days you haven't responded to this email, you get the next workflow action. So anything that's around time, whether it's duration, whether it's calculating conditions that are related to time, you will need dates, and then from there you can build powerful workflows.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's interesting.
So services were kind of good. One note here: there's not just short text; you also have long text, where you have rich text formatting, which allows us to have bullet points, bold, and yeah, different like also content on multiple rows. And finally, for requests, what do you have? Actually, not much, just a status where we have we can turn it. We're going to use it to manage our process, and I think we had 3 statuses: open, 1 lost. Simpler is better. Yeah. And the default. This is also one way you can enforce things in database and say, I don't want any record to have no value. So whenever a request is created, we start with open. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it will not apply to your logic. Whenever you can do it, do it. Okay, we're nearly there. The last piece I wanted to show you that's still related to fields is, and this is the part I mentioned at the beginning, taking advantage of the power of databases, and in particular the power of no-code databases. And one very important aspect are calculated fields. So you guessed it. What are calculated fields? We're going to have a quick look at it. We have 3 categories based on I decide. try to define this this way. So first, automatic fields. We have formula fields, which are more like a novelty from no-code platforms, and we have AI fields, which is more like the new kid in town. And these fields, they automate calculations and data transformations for us. So for example, calculated fields, what they allow you to do is generate record metadata. What is metadata? It's data about the record itself. And it's very useful for a variety of cases when you're working with databases. For instance, metadata is going to help you identify records. It's going to help you track changes made to records. And it's, in general, the foundation for database triggers and automations. Examples, record ID, when you can get the unique identifier of a record. Auto numbers, timestamps, which we're going to see in a minute. User logs. User logs are going to track who did what on the record. All of this is metadata about the record that's going to be generated for us if you are working inside a no-code database. So let's see a few ones we can implement in the time we have left. So basically, best practice, anything like when I start a table, everybody has their old habits. Yeah. For me, I always have a view that starts with all records, all fields, where I can see everything that's been like the whole data in a view, and especially all the fields that we have created, and then we have different working views that we can use. That's one thing I try to be an advocate of. So whole records, all fields. The second thing I always do is creating these two, which is record ID. And for this, I'm going to use a formula field and record ID. So, and here, what does it do? It generates for me automatically a unique ID. So it's a way for me to identify each record individually. So even if I have 9x...
And is that a way to prevent redundancies as well?
Exactly. And if I want to make changes to 9x in workflows or in automations, I'm never going to say, hey, look for 9x, because I know, since we are in the realm of user-generated data, maybe Alex created the account for 9x yesterday. Then Peeves thought that's a great website, we should be on this, and created in one here. And then Jan created one as well. And then we end up with 3 different ones. With record ID, we still have a way to distinguish themselves. The second thing, if we want to see who came first, is systematically creating a timestamp. And this is a calculated field, so you have some settings there. But basically, it's saying, hey, this one was the first one because it was created in the morning. And these two are completely new. Therefore, these two are good candidates to end up like this. So record ID created. back to the slides we had before. It's the first one here and a version of timestamp. I have two more examples, and then I think we can go to the more like the
Yeah,
final bit, and I can
absolutely.
show you things concretely. So for the users table, I would have the same. I'm not going to do it here, but as best practice, just having the credit time and the record ID, just as a way to uniquely identify them. By the way, so something I forgot to mention, the record ID, it's not generated when I create the field. It exists anyway. Here, we're just displaying it. If you get an editable record via Make or Zapier or via API, this is, or the second I do this, we just create it. Like, this is how the thing works by default. We're just exposing it here, which makes it easier to identify things sometimes when you're going to search for things. So users, I would do the same. And on the services, oh, sorry, on the requests, no, sorry, the services, what do you want to put? Yeah, we have one way. Sorry, again, on the request, not the services. So we had this field request ID, and right now I have an auto number, which is just by default. It's going to be a unique number generated. We start with 1, we increment of 1. That's not ideal. Ideally, I would like to have something that is maybe combining different things together. And so if we say 9x is getting the social video strategy from Humble and Brag, then maybe the name or the request ID we have here could have something that is more, there's a mix of what we have, what we've planned initially to, oops, yeah, I'm just gonna grab the formula. A mix of ID and a mix of the content. So for these two, not ideal, but at least here my request ID, okay, the social video strategy from Humble and Brag, and this is a unique identifier. You can play a little bit with that. I don't have particular best practices here, just some recommendation. It should be readable, ideally. So this is great for machines. It's not so good for humans. So sometimes it's good to have something that is good for both, like unique with a series of digits at the end, and still something that you can identify as in, okay, I know what service and for whom. And then the last one, which makes it complicated to have the ideal one, is to combine everything. So here, ideally, I would have like, maybe the best one is actually to do the service and the buyer, because the service we already kind of know who that is. Okay, it's 9x buying the social video strategy from Hummer and Bragg. One example of a field that's then whenever I create a new request, this is automatically generated for me. Last one, absolute last one, with 5 minutes over time already. If we want to track some changes made to the record, we also have last modified. So let's say I want to track the changes made to the status. I'm going to call this last status change. Then I can use this field, last modified time. So instead of being like the time it's created, we're going to track whenever a change is made. I can even point to a specific field and say, I only want you to report whenever we're making changes to the status. So when it was created a few minutes ago, there was a status change. It was generated 7:03. And now if I make one change, let's say we win it, then it was last change just now. We
And
can
is
have
there a
the same
way
version.
is there a way you can tell you who changed that?
So this is where it gets tricky with the name. Last status changed by. Here I think if we have developers watching this, they will start to question a little bit the naming skills. So we have last modified by. You can point to this, and this is actually a good way to finish here, to conclude. It didn't need, it's not I created, then I track. It's always been tracking this for me in the background. So it's already like you just need to create the field to see, like, same here, who created these records, created by. You can, it's already generated for you. You just need to use it. Who
It's
created
just a way
it?
to pull it to the surface.
It's a way to understand, like, those are very useful if you want to understand what's going on. Just with created and created by, you can create a view just that shows you the records that were created today and see who created them. This is automatically generated for you. There's no automation. That's a property of those databases.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Yeah, all of the databases mentioned at the beginning have this out of the box. Like, this is just a field you add, and that's pretty much it. The last thing I want to show you is more how does this work behind the scenes, just to
Yeah. So
let you
if you
take it
still
for granted.
until the end, if
If you
if
look
you're
at,
still with us, now you get the surprise. You get the behind the scenes.
yeah, so let's look at product test. So we got there with the part 2. Let me share again the schema. Okay, so this is our schema roughly. And if I go in my imagine it's completely different, that would be embarrassing. Let's see. Up, different colors, a bit of tension here. So we have user services, requests. Of course, I have a bit more. Fields, those calculated fields. So I put record ID left and right, and I think also in what I display here, exactly. We don't need that. But roughly, I think we have roughly the same thing. So I have requests, we have companies. I'm going just to align them. Requests, companies, users living like this out there, and services. I still have, maybe buying requests. It's more or less the same. I think it's the same, at least. And so basically, now what happens when we connect all the dots together? So I have this interface. So we're displaying the services. We're displaying things from, and maybe I show the data. What are we displaying here? We're displaying this table. This is just a nicer version of that. So I can browse them, I can filter them. The moment I request a service, let's say automation support, we are creating a request. So we're creating that request. That's this one here. This request, so by default, I set up NoCodeOps as the buyer. We can see the service has been selected. The seller is 9x. And basically the other interfaces that you can see here in my request, I view the requests. So I view this table. And the only filter I put in this view for demo purposes is I'm only viewing the request from NoCodeOps. So there was a request at the beginning of the workshop for automation as a service. There's a second request now for automation support. But basically, we are viewing this table. And on the seller side, I'm also viewing requests. And I am this time seeing requests filtered for the seller, and the seller is 9x. And this scales because if now we have, I'm going to create a request just like that for, not from NoCodeOps, but for Design Joy to get on automation as a service. We can see that 9x gets a request from another buyer. And now to the last thing, on the request, we can see these are open. This was a very small thing, just a change of status. You can see on both sides. So right now my request is open as NoCodeOps, and I'm waiting for basically an answer from 9x. And on the seller side, I have this UI, very basic, where I just say, of course, we'll do it, and that as well. And design join, no, we don't have time for this. And basically, back there, you can see that, yeah, the status is one, obviously, but the outcome is that you get your response.
That's amazing. And maybe we can have a follow up, in the future where you can see where the skeleton of the data that you just built, like Alex showed us here, can
Yeah.
then turn into this beautiful interface. Because I'm assuming you're using Airtable interfaces to create that kind of simple front end as well.
Yes. So this, with Airtable interfaces, this takes 10 minutes, 10 minutes to build. The constraints obviously is that you need Airtable licenses for everyone to use it. But I think it's a good playground to test, to sort of already test the flow. Yeah. So you need a bit of imagination, obviously. This should be a beautiful landing page with beautiful cards for every service. And then when I click on it, this is a nice page where I have all the descriptions and so on. What you're looking to test here is more the functionality and whether the flow works. And if you can build a front end where you can already test the flow in such a short amount of time, and that's good to validate your sort of like MVP.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's so important, even though like maybe regular people like me are so inclined to follow the shiny, beautiful front end and,
Yeah,
it has to look nice.
yeah,
You just showed us today, thanks to this presentation, how important it is for us to design a database properly in order for that beautiful front end to
yeah.
run smoothly without running into errors when more clients, more companies start using it. So that's fantastic.
I will stop sharing because otherwise it's too promotional. I think you got it. There's some goodies in the course to help you do that. Maybe like one piece of advice also on the topic. We try to break it down really in the course on like there are rules, but actually there are also, I think there's also practice. And rule, especially with no-code databases, rules can be broken sometimes. Um, if you think, if some of you are building with software, for instance, there are things that you are going to need. There are connections you're going to need to do on database level, so you are able to display information. So don't come back to me with, but you said we shouldn't do this. Sometimes you have limitations or basically constraints that come from the stack you're choosing, and you need to, you need to bypass those rules. Um, this is more if you're a purist or if you can afford not to create too many relations, too many tables, have too much complexity, then basically we have a fully functioning marketplace with 4 tables. And that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And, you definitely pitch the course. Again, I could not recommend any higher. The quality of any service, any course provided by 9x, it's so top notch. And you've seen it today with this presentation. Alex, you've got a talent for teaching people how to do these things. Like your pace, your teaching style is absolutely fantastic. And I'm really happy you're like the first speaker that we have here for what we have planned at NoCodeOps, which I'm going to disclose in the next upcoming weeks. But if you liked today's content, if you liked Alex's teaching style, then we have something special for you coming up in May. So do stay tuned, do follow us, and you won't be disappointed. Alex, do you have maybe 5 more minutes for Q&A?
Yes, I have like
We have.
anytime you need. I'm very curious to learn actually about some of you who are attending the workshop. I'm very curious of the like, did you learn something? What value did you get? And also what you're trying to do. In the ops world. So yes, five
Yeah,
minutes
tell us all
more,
about it.
like happy to chat. Yeah.
5 or 10 minutes. So drop your comments in the chat. We would like to know all about your next steps as an ops and what you've taken from today's workshop as well. April says, thanks. I love the tutorial. Very welcome, April. If you're not part of our Discord yet, do join. It's free and we keep the conversations going there. We do have a question from Alberto. He says, what are the key limitations when using Airtable? Do you have any parameters that can dictate whether a client's use case or dataset size are better suited for SQL, Postgres SQL? Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So record. How awesome you have the questions here. It's a great platform. So record limits are like it's a known issue with Airtable. You have the typical situation where some clients ask us, but what if it scales? To which my answer is, what if you never scale? So it really depends on your project. If you know you have going to have 1 million records next week, then Airtable is bad. It's not suited for this. It's just not that it's bad, but you have to go pro code or full code or regular code, or you can store things in Xano, for instance. That's much more robust for this use case. So record limit is one aspect, but then comes the other side of the trade-off, which is who is expected to work with this database. This is like, let's recall why Airtable came in the first place. This is because these databases that scale are difficult to use. You need a bit of SQL literacy. The tools are a bit more dev tools, even though things are getting better now. There are also options that plug to Postgres database and so on. But that's the real trade-off. You want more power, you're going to need to be more literate in technical. You want convenience. You want an experience that feels like you're using top software that's delightful to use. It's nicer to work in Notion. It's nicer to work in SmartSuite or Coda, Airtable. People can collaborate on it that have not really an idea of tech. So this is really the trade-off, performance versus technical literacy. But the limitation is always record limits, number of automations also, but maybe it's less of a consideration because you can overcome that with integration platforms like Zapier makes. I would say really, how much do you need to store in your database?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I hope that helps. And I feel like we're so fortunate to be exploring no code today because the resources available out there or the integration platforms that you were referring to, like there's always an option for us to always upskill and get better and get to the goal that we're trying to get to. Alrighty, let's see more questions coming. From Jared. Hi, Jared, from the community. What is the biggest error that you see in database creation?
The first one, the schema. So the schema is the one like I think any automation agency is going to tell you that when you are looking at a client's project and they've been doing things on their own for a while, you are going first you're going to look at, okay, how many databases do they have? Multiple? Okay. First level of scare. Second, okay, now let's look at the tables they've created. Does that make sense? Let's look at the logic, and there are a lot of things like there's a tendency to multiply tables, to not be very disciplined or strict about whether you need another table or not. And that's, again, the strength of those tools is creating a table takes 5 seconds. There are like 5 or 6 ways to create a table in Airtable. You can import, you can sync, but what's very difficult, and that also applies to programming, is at the end of the journey, programmers need to learn what not to build, what not to not additional piece of code or additional feature to ship. And no coders are very known for adding, because these tools are so delightful to use. Might as well create another table. It's fun after all. But you're creating technical debt, you're creating data redundancy that we've seen. And eventually it gets it's funny in the database. It's less funny when you are going to build workflows on top of that database, because suddenly you have different sources or you need to have multi-step workflows because you get data from one table and then another, and then you end up needing to sync data, while in the first place you could have stored everything in one place. So database schema is the most important. I hope what you saw in the workshop just points you in the right direction. We can't cover all the situations, and this is also something, that's why like data mastery, I would be a little bit humble on the
It was
title of
so
the workshop.
appropriate. This is
Still
definitely
learning.
a masterclass. This is
It's
definitely a
still it's
masterclass.
still learning. It's still learning. We still face situations today where, looking at how the data is structured, we are wondering, okay, but how would you structure that? Should we have, do we need John table here? And how would that work then? And what are the implications? So it only gets harder as the projects get more complicated, but definitely this is the one where you need to be very careful. And the only advice I try to convey there is try to avoid redundancy, try to do less, to do more with less tables, less fields, and you will make your life simpler.
Is that what a data architect does? Like the role of a data architect? I don't know, just throwing it out there.
I don't know what a data architect is, but
Yeah, I've seen that role.
but
I was like, I wonder because it's such a fascinating field that I can see one person specializing in how to create a clean database, like what you showed us today.
yeah, I think so. Also, one tip: if you work in a tech company and there's a tech team that is building the app, the core product, and you are going to build the back office, or you're going to build different Coda or Airtable projects to power your operations, then talk to them about, show them your, hey, here's the schema I'm thinking about. Here's how I would structure things. I think these are the types of conversations that ops and tech should have more often, which is you have very skilled people in the other room that you're already taking some burden off their plate by trying to automate things on your own. That doesn't mean you shouldn't bother them for those questions, which really snowball if you're making mistakes and if you make things too complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Absolutely.
devs. I have a couple of CTOs friends, and whenever I have questions when making this course, I ask because we're trying to simplify also technical knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
we simplify and we vulgarize, and sometimes the definition is like less technical, but what we think operators should know, but I still double check whether it's correct. It's not operators build in one side and techies build on the other side. It's we can learn a ton from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved your kind of less is more approach. And I love the visuals that you use to kind of aid that teaching as well. Like they're so important. They definitely help me understand your courses a lot better. I'm going to take these two more questions here. One from Chad. And it's amazing because we still have like 50 people live.
Fire.
Fantastic.
Thanks for
Amazing.
staying to the end
Thank you for staying
on
until the
data
end indeed.
bases. No, I think I made it. 50 people staying to listen to me for data and databases.
Yeah, it takes some talent. I told you, you're a natural. And here's the community, guys. If join the community, stay in touch with us. We have a newsletter, a product, a community, and more goods to come. Question from Chad: once your data is in Airtable, would you use it for a dashboard, or would you view it in a different SaaS?
So the question, so once it's in Airtable, would you use it for a dashboard or would you do it in different sets? So Chad, it depends. And it depends on what your data is, who should consume it. I see at least two different cases. One is internal usage and one is external usage. For internal usage, I would start with Airtable dashboards because this is part of interfaces. We didn't see it in the build, but you can actually very easily build dashboards that summarize the data on the different tables, and you can go pretty advanced. Airtable is not a data visualization tool, but again, step one, if it does the job for a while, might as well start with that path. However, if you need people outside your organization to see that information, if you stick to Airtable interfaces, then people will need to get an Airtable license. We're Airtable partners, so we'll say maybe you want to get an Airtable license, but I invite you as well to look at the pricing page. And you will see that this is not, it's not scalable on the budget side. That's why I have applications like Softer, like Glide, like Stacker, which are front-end app builders. And what they initially all specialize in is providing a front end to a no-code database. So it's Software plus Airtable, Stacker plus Airtable, or Software plus NoLoco plus Coda. I think they ship the integration. In those applications, they allow you to create a front end, and including dashboards that you are going to be able to publish. And even so, either you put it behind login still, so you require people to log in so that they can see their dashboard metrics, or you could publish just a web page and make it visible to the world. And the last thing on that approach, if you go down that path, you need to look at front-end app builders blocks, because the way they work, it's not, you're not going to be able to build pixel perfect interfaces. You're going to basically build blocks of front end. And so if you, the first thing you need to do when you use that approach is you need to check what blocks, analytics or charts blocks does Softer, Stacker, Glide offer. And you need to be happy with the way data is displayed, because there is no way you can have a different dashboard, a different looking dashboard. That's the constraint with these. They are very powerful, and you can build a dashboard. If you have your Airtable database, you spend an afternoon with Glide or Software, you have your dashboard, you can publish it. However, you're not going to have much impact on or influence on how it looks.
Yeah, they're not super customizable yet. And there's a
That's
lot
the
of
idea.
like, yeah,
That's the idea. The idea
yeah.
is, I think that's the pitch from Software, is make apps without devs. Love it. But that means, yeah, there's not much
It comes
configuration.
with a consequence as well, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
make apps without devs, but that it's not yet make any app without devs. It's like make big
Yeah,
Lego blocks.
exactly. And like, there's Toddle, even Webflow now you can plug to Airtable. So there's a lot of options out there, but
Yeah.
focus on the foundations, build a clean database, and then there's a plethora of options for you to build the front end on top of that. Last question from Timmy.
Oof.
If modeling a user table, all right, let me see. Let me pull this question.
Yeah, I think I
Two
got this.
user types of staff and agent. Staff have many HR fields that agents do not, and agents have many fields that staff doesn't need. How do you choose one-to-one versus fields that you turn off?
Very good question. And actually, that's a little bit the buyers and sellers story there, because right now it's just companies with three fields, but then eventually you might have some parameters on the seller side that are only available if you're a seller, and some parameters on the buyer side, or less functionality there. So there, the answer is it really depends. Some keys there. If you are like the property of database is you don't need to use on a single table, you don't need to use all the fields. So until it breaks or becomes really a hassle, I would have buyer related fields and I would have seller related fields. I would have staff and agent related fields in the same table and see how far it goes for a while. Like I don't have a clear reason for doing that. However, this is one situation where that topic where we're starting to branch things more and more, and it's two people, so it's two users, but they're very different. Maybe at some point you need to split. I, out of principle, would not, and would try as much as possible to keep it in the same. And I had one other thing in mind. So two user type staff and agents, many HR fields. So you can hide, yes. Yeah, no, I think that was the essential. Like yes. What about the point? Like can a user belong to both? Again, we're still with the same question. Can a user be staff and agent?
Mm-hmm.
This is one side where then in that case, having two tables creates redundancy. Um, and typically when you're dealing with user management, actually constraints from some front-end app builder will tell you you can only have one table. In software, if you connect software to Airtable, you're going to have one table users where you paste all the users, and then this dimension of roles and where you have more data for a particular role, you will have to handle it in one table. So the answer is not always keep everything in one table. There might be exceptions. There might be good reason. Do I have a rule for that? For when to branch? Unfortunately, not. I think this is really like the type of discussion you could have with um, developers or people who are like more working on database design and have like, maybe like more special situations. Out of principle, I would have a users table, different roles, and then some data can be left empty. Some data is filled depending on what you're supposed to do in the app. And I think 99% of the cases, this is what you should do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it varies obviously from use case to use case. Maybe you can get a little bit more insights as well next week, next Thursday, with our next guest, Sahil Koshla, who will be explaining and chatting about best practices of using Airtable to facilitate team collaboration and project tracking. So maybe more users involved. We can dive a little bit deeper into the realm of Airtable and database, following from this beautiful, fantastic, amazing presentation here from Alex today. And just echoing what Daniel was saying, Alex, again, thank you so much for this workshop. I definitely think that it was a masterclass because you're so knowledgeable about everything, when it comes to no code development, APIs. It's fantastic to have you here, and again, we're very fortunate to be learning from you. So thank you for this opportunity today and for the future ones that we will be having together.
It was pretty fun. I had a blast. and
Fantastic.
and we still need to figure out the dating equivalent of a joint table with end to end. But this
Yeah, the dating metaphor
exactly.
really hit the spot. So let me know how
Exactly.
that
I think
develops.
some will think about that. Just think about that, and when you have your answer, just DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Just DM me your answer. I'll be curious.
Speaking of LinkedIn, let me share your profile. So anyone here watching still, I would highly encourage you to go ahead and link up and connect with Alex and the fantastic team at 9X.
Awesome.
Alrighty. And until then, my friend, I shall see you on the internet and we will be chatting tomorrow,
Tomorrow, actually.
actually.
Thank you for
All
having
right.
me. It was really, really fun.
Uh,
Let's do another one soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Alex. Have a great day. And thank you, everyone here watching NoCodeOps. Stick around, keep growing, and yeah, keep becoming a better op.
Bye bye.
Everyone.